to County Fair on Waycross Community Media. Today's episode is going to premiere on Memorial Day, so we went to Hamilton County's biggest Memorial Day celebration, which is here in Spring Grove Cemetery. The history of Memorial Day starts with the Civil War and the remembrance of those lost during the war that came afterwards. Now we, on Memorial Day, remember all who were lost as soldiers in the line of duty, and we do that here with the Sixth Ohio Reenactment Unit, who will fire a salute here today. Also, the ladies that are part of that unit are here to represent as well. Today, I will be joining the ladies of the Sixth Ohio and the ladies of the Ladies Living History Society of Greater Cincinnati, dressed in 1860s attire as we honor those who fell during the Civil War, but also in every conflict after that.
Color detail, post, shoulder, arm. Arm. Parade. Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. I fully understand the meaning of today. However, we always like to take an opportunity to recognize those veterans that did make it home. So if you're a veteran of the United States of America and served in the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, or the Coast Guard, please stand and be recognized. I'd also like to recognize at this point any members here that had received the Purple Heart. Today is a special occasion for the camp in the fact that we have adopted a Gold Star family. And our Gold Star family member today is Second Lieutenant Jack Buxton. He's a native of Cincinnati, Ohio. He grew up in Madisonville, attended Withrow High School, graduated, went on to the University of Cincinnati for 2 years. He gained the basic requirements to enlist, or correction, to sign up, volunteer for the Army Air Corps program at the time. He went to basic flight in Texas, graduated, went on to Balmer School in Colorado. Upon that, he was assigned to the 8th United States Air Force in Europe, stationed in England in 1944, in July of 44. And on August 16th, 1944, on his second mission over Germany, Magdeburg, Germany, his plane took enemy aircraft fire, anti-aircraft fire. The plane took a disastrous hits from the fire, ground fire. It inverted. Only one crew member was able to bail out, the radio operator. He survived, was captured by the Germans, spent the rest of the war in a Stalag Luft prison. And part of the reason we know the story was his survival and his subsequent telling of the story to the family members that did not make it home. So he is buried with his crew. His remains were recovered in 1950. They are buried as a crew together in Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery outside of St. Louis, Missouri. Today, I am honored to present his niece, Sue Belkamp. I invite you, after the ceremony, to please see his original uniform jacket and his crusher cap that was sent home to the family after he had died. And I'm going to invite Sue real quick to tell you about her website. It's absolutely fantastic if you want to learn more about her Uncle Jack. And her nephew is here somewhere.
He's coming. He was late. He got caught in the traffic.
So he is the namesake of our hero, Second Lieutenant Jack Buxton, and our Gold Star family. Thank you.
Here he is. Good. Just in time, Jack.
It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today, Lieutenant Colonel Kirk Greiner. He was commissioned a second lieutenant from Cal State University, Northridge. He has led Marines from the platoon to the battalion level over his long and distinguished career. He has deployed to Iraq twice and to Afghanistan once. His awards and decorations include the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal, the Navy Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Valor Device, and the Combat Action Ribbon. Lieutenant Greiner's duty station is the DLA in Columbus, Ohio, and he currently calls Loveland, Ohio, home. And please join me in welcoming our guest speaker, Lieutenant Colonel Greiner. Check one, check two. Can you hear me in the back there? All right. Well, this is great weather we got. I'll have to thank you for that, chaps. Appreciate that. And everyone looks so lovely, especially the ladies out there. I don't know if it's okay for me to say this, but I think you all make Scarlett O'Hara proud. I know she was in a union. And I'd like to thank Todd, Colonel Mayer, a veteran himself, for asking me to do this. It's an honor. And I'd like to thank the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War for hosting this event and again having me speak. I'm not a relative of a Union soldier myself. My family came here to the United States long after the Civil War. I am the great-grandson of a Prussian cavalryman, if that makes any difference. So, yeah, and I'm glad that Todd, this is Memorial Day, and it's a day to commemorate and recognize and pay homage to those Americans that gave the ultimate sacrifice for this nation. But I also, and I was glad that he recognized the veterans here on this day as well. And I'd personally like to ask any Vietnam veterans to stand up, please. So these men did not get the recognition they deserve. And of course, I'd like to recognize Jack Buxton's family. I guess his sister is Mary Jo, correct?
Correct.
She couldn't make it today, but his niece, as you met, Sue, is here, and his namesake, Jack. Your name's John, you go by Jack, correct?
No, my name's Jack.
Okay. All right. Well, my son's name is John, and he goes by Jack. That good-looking kid in the blue shirt back there. So, and he's named after my grandpa. And I do encourage you to check out her website. My girlfriend and I, the other day, we drove up. We saw this little car race up in Indianapolis yesterday, and on the drive up there, I printed out several, and there's a lot of letters. Several of Jack's letters, and he wrote letters back to his mom and his dad and Mary Jo. So it was,
you read these letters, you get to know the man, and what a great guy, what a remarkable, person he was. And we laughed. He was funny. He was, and like we talked about earlier, again, he's writing his letters to his mom and dad, so. I kind of might have censored him a little bit. But he had such a good energy, positive, he seemed like such a remarkable man. And, then we read his last letter, we're sad that that was his last letter. And, like so many men and women that, he's so young, 21 years old, second son. And it makes me think what he would have been. And just like the young Marines that I've been associated with and that were killed in combat, you think what their contributions would have been. They would probably have been captains of industry, teachers, scholars, you name it. And they willingly, gave their life for their country, and their future was cut short. So I'm sure he would have been a great father, husband, just like all the young men and women that gave their lives for the country. So it was a great read, and I look forward to reading the rest of them, because we couldn't read them all, because there's like, I don't know, like 60 letters or so again, the website Hero in Flight.
HeroInFlight.com.
You really get to know this incredible man, so I recommend you to take a look at that. One thing when Todd asked me, not long after when Todd asked me to speak here, I happened to be watching TV and I saw the video for the a commercial for a video game, Call of Duty. And so it made me think, Call of Duty, it's a pretty popular video game. It's what do they call it? First-person shooter in the different combat environments, different venues and wars and whatnot. So I thought about it. I took it upon myself. I started asking my son's friends. We're all, mainly from his Boy Scout troop. So you're talking 12 to 17. Some of these boys I was talking to, and I was asking them, what is Call of Duty? And right away, most of them, video game. And I said, no. What does it mean, Call of Duty? And, I got a lot of I don't knows, and I got, it's when a drill sergeant yells at somebody, right? And my favorite Call of Duty, isn't that when you have to go to the bathroom? So, different duty, I think. One of them did say, it's when you serve, right? It's a military thing. And I said, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not specifically for the military. I'm sure if there's any public servants, police, firefighters out there, I'm sure they can attest to that. But it's something I wanted to talk about because, Call of Duty, it is, folks like Jack Buxton. I don't know if it was Pearl Harbor or what it was, but it was a Call of Duty. And he answered that call. And, it is doing something, that you felt compelled to do, you're called to do. And for those of us that have gone into harm's way, that Call of Duty, that you're going into harm's way. You could risk your life. You could pay the ultimate sacrifice. And so that's what, if you Google Call of Duty, you'll see it's all about the video game. But I'm hoping that I can, impress upon young people that Call of Duty is that, is that calling. Not a physical calling, not a drill sergeant, but it's you feel compelled. And I remember I went to Iraq in '03. I was a company commander. I'd been in the Marine Corps 10 years, and had not gone to combat. And this was what I trained for. I'm in the infantry. This is like, if you're a supply person or you're a truck driver, you do supply in peacetime. You do truck driving in peacetime. But only if you're in the combat arms do you train, but you don't really do your job until you go to combat. And so, I will admit that there's a part of me that was excited, and, but going back my second time, again, a Call of Duty, it's not, it's a little different. You know that now you've been there and seen some stuff, and it's not as excited to go back my second time. And but again, it's Call of Duty. I owe it to the Marines that I was with, and I owe it to this nation. And and I'm sure that Jack knew where he was getting, especially as being a crew member or pilot of B-24. So that one of the most dangerous missions you can have. I mean, I think per capita they had more casualties than the Marines. So it was a very, very dangerous job. He knew what he was doing and what he was getting into, and he did so willingly. He answered that call. With no fear. So, if all you youngsters out there, Call of Duty is not just a video game. It is something that those of us, I think many of us in this audience, we heard that call, we answered that call, and so I wanted to touch upon that. I'm supposed to keep this somewhat short. I think I'll do so. I just wanted to close with, because also, like the good colonel here said earlier, Memorial Day, and I touched upon it, it's to commemorate and recognize the Americans that gave the ultimate sacrifice, for the nation. And yes, you'll see commercials for Memorial Day sales, and you'll see people, they're going to the beach, they're doing barbecues, and I don't know, that might frustrate some people, might disappoint some of y'all, but I think that, I think it's okay, quite frankly. It's, those of us, and I do think the vast majority of Americans, like Todd said, they may not understand, they may not have been touched, by a friend or family that gave the ultimate sacrifice, like the Buxton family did, but they know, and they acknowledge. So, and the reason we answered that Call of Duty, and the reason we signed up, and to go into harm's way, was to, protect this country's freedoms, to allow people. So when people are at the beach and they're getting 50% off at wherever, and they're enjoying their barbecues, that's because folks, like I think a lot of us in the audience, and Jack, they answered the Call of Duty, and they protected folks' freedoms to enjoy this day. And it's a beautiful day. I'll probably have go do barbecue myself after this. So again, I'm honored to be here, and I'm humbled, and thank you for inviting me. And please, again, I think you all are here recognizing what this day means, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. And always keep in mind our veterans that paid the ultimate price and gave their life for this country after they answered their Call of Duty. So, thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. How many of you, is this your first time here? Outstanding, that's great. I'm Mike Davis. I'm captain of the Sixth Ohio Volunteer Infantry. We're a reenactment group here in Cincinnati, Ohio. We usually do anywhere from 10 to 12 events a year, all different kinds of things. This has always been my favorite, though. This is the high holiday for the SUV and for us to honor the fallen. I want to thank the SUV once again for having us take part in the ceremony, the Ladies Auxiliary, Spring Grove Cemetery, and especially you for coming out. I mean, I was doing a little research last night. Cincinnati almost has 300,000 in its population. And you came out as a wonderful core to remember our Civil War veterans. This is my 25th year being a reenactor. I started in 1994. And in 1995, we came here, it's the first time I'd ever been here, for a ceremony up the hill for Colonel Robert Riley of the 75th Ohio. He was killed at Chancellorsville, and we dedicated a headstone for him. And I just fell in love with this place. It's like Todd said, I come all the way from Columbus. And if I calculate it, I think I've spent 1,000 hours driving, 6 days of my life, driving, speaking, going home, if you add up the time. But it's well worth it. And I often ask myself, and my wife asks me all the time, can't you find something in Columbus to do this? Because it's like, you gotta run off, miss the barbecue, or come late. But no, this is really worth it for me. And I always beat myself up because about 1st of May, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? What are you going to say? And I either feel confident that what I said got the point home, or I spend 2 hours driving, beating myself up because I just didn't get what I wanted to say. So I'm proud to say that as I drove down here, I prayed to the Lord to give me some inspiration. And I began to think about, this is amazing, some of the things that the speakers ahead of me have said. The individual experiences are what hooks the next generation of people. You know, we're all here, but it's so wonderful to see the kids. And I thought about that when we were formed up over there. A gentleman came up to me and actually asked me if it was okay. He had 3 of his daughters in the car, if they could come watch this. Gotcha, thanks. That's affirmation. And I began to think about my experience in history. It started in 1964. I was 5 years old. My parents got me a little set of plastic Civil War stickers. And some fuse just lit inside me, and it just burned for the last 55 years. Yeah, I just turned 60. Hard to believe, right? But then my appreciation began the more I read about it. And my appreciation for history and the sacrifice that these men and women went through became even stronger when I got to know my grandfather, Russell Hawk. He was a World War I doughboy. I have a picture, a postcard. You could get your picture taken in front of an American flag, right on the back, and send it home as a postcard. I still have that postcard. He's in it with a friend he met over there. They were best buddies. I never found out his name, and I wish I had to this day to try to find out where that guy's family is. But anyway, he's, you know, a 10-year-old boy. Grandpa, what did you do in the war? Tell me, what did you fight the Germans? Oh, and he'd always tell me, these guys have heard this a million times. The day I got to the front, they signed the armistice, I turned around and went home. I was so disappointed. I was like, wow, that's a terrible story. We used to run around with his World War I helmet, had his gas mask and all that stuff. And he passed away when I was 16, and I met his sister-in-law. Her husband had been over there with him, and I said, yeah, that's terrible. Grandpa got to the front and turned around and went home. She just shook her head. Mikey, your grandpa saw all kinds of action over there with his brother Slim, got shot over there. He just didn't want to tell you that as a 10-year-old kid. Then the lights started to come on, which is rare when you're 16. But I remember the stories he told me, and it began to occur, if he did that, there's no way he got to the trenches and turned around and went home. And he told me one time he was in the trenches with his buddy, and they had been in the trenches for about 2 weeks. It was muddy, they were lousy, and there was a lull in the action. So see, this didn't occur to me at the time. Action, Grandpa. He said, anyway. So we got out of the trenches and we went back behind the lines. So we found this old burned out French farmhouse. He said, the best as I can describe it is like a big old witch's cauldron we found. So we got a fire going and we got some water. And we took all our nasty clothes off and put them in there. It started to boil. Pretty soon we heard a truck rumble up and a sergeant yelling, Company B, falling for uniform issue. So he said, we looked at each other and what can they say, no? So we're standing there in that line with all these other fellows that are in terrible uniforms. We're standing there buck naked, working our way up to the truck. And I'll never forget, to this day, the look he always made. He'd say, that sergeant picked up the uniform, and when he looked down at me, he just went and handed me the uniform. Handed my buddy to me. We ran off and put those new uniforms on. Pardon my language, but he always finished that story with, Mikey, as far as I know, those goddamn uniforms are still boiling over there in France. What does that have to do with today? He survived the war, but that story he told me, I remembered it. I got a feeling you will too. And it made me hungry for more and more to learn about his experience. I always come back to the Civil War. I love that period for some reason, but I branch out. But it's these stories that we hear that when we're children, it's up to us to pass this on. Especially in this day and age, you cannot assume that the next generation is being taught everything it needs to be taught. And even if it was, we still have a responsibility to our children and the next generation take them to Arlington National Cemetery. Bring them here. Let them walk on the battlefield at Gettysburg and see the grandeur of that place and the monuments, and it will have an effect on them. It might light a little fire in them. That's our job. I never served, but I see that as my mission in life, that I have all the freedoms that I have because of each gentleman and all of you veterans. We appreciate your service. We'll never forget the fallen, and we'll always love this country for them. Thank you all. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
I don't know if you noticed, some of you did, I saw you looking up, but it looked like Cincinnati Warbirds did an honor flight for Jack Buxton, flying over. Our next speaker is going to cover our auxiliary and a great tradition that was started during Decoration Day, and she's going to offer an invitation. So please welcome Wanda Langdon.
Well, it's my great honor to stand here and tell you a little bit of history, because I have to tell you the history to explain what we're going to ask you to take part in with us today, a recreation of event that happened in 1865. So if you'll go back in your thoughts to 1865 and the ending of the Civil War, most of you know at least a little about the Civil War and know that there were upwards of numbers of over 700,000 men who died in that war now. So if you think about that, 700,000 men across the country. The war ends and you've got wives and family members at home, and the men start trickling back, coming home. Well, some of the families begin to notice that their soldier isn't coming back. There were battles when 30,000, 50,000, 70,000 men died. They could not bury them all individually or even try to keep track of who died. There were mass graves. So many of the soldiers were buried in a mass grave. You had women and family members, sons, who had no body to grieve over, no family member to mourn over, and no way to say goodbye and honor them. So after the war that ended, Mrs. Mary Logan was out one day and she noticed in some of the graveyards around Washington, D.C. that some of the women were out there scattering flowers and rose petals. And she stopped and talked to them, and they were honoring those who died in the Civil War, the graves that had been quickly set up and the headstones that were there. And then the ladies who did not have a body to bury or to recognize were going and honoring those graves. And they were hoping that someone, somewhere, was doing the same thing for their loved ones who did not make it home, who they couldn't mourn. And I understand that. I had a great-grandfather who died at Culp's Hill in Gettysburg. He's buried in one of those mass graves. He didn't make it home. More recent, I had an uncle who died in World War II at the Battle of the Bulge. He's buried at the Henry Chappelle ceremony over in Belgium. So we don't have a gravesite here to be able to go to and honor and thank him. So after back in the Civil War, it became a tradition for the women to gather the rose petals and the flowers and go and decorate the graves every day. Mrs. Logan went home and told her husband, General Logan, who was the commander of the Grand Army of the Republic, about this wonderful thing the ladies were doing. And he said, well, that's just amazing. Then we have to do it across the country. General Logan issued what is now called General Order 11, establishing that for a tradition to happen across the country, to honor those who had died, to commemorate their deaths. So today, we have rose petals, and we'd like you all to take part. After we finish the ceremonies, when the ceremony ends, there will be people around with baskets of flower petals. We ask you to go get some flower petals. Go out here to the graves where all these war soldiers are buried, and symbolically either honor and commemorate them or someone else that you know who died in one of the many wars. We thank you.
Hey! March! Hey! March! Recover! Arms! Shoulder! Arms! Up out! Hey! Rest on! Arms!
That was a wonderful ceremony, wasn't it? We're privileged in Spring Grove to host the Memorial Day ceremonies. We've been doing it for quite some time. And as was said, we're right here, we're surrounded by about 1,000 Civil War veterans who gave the last full measure of devotion to save the Republic. And Memorial Day's origins come from a national outpouring of grief and appreciation to those veterans. But, sort of was touched on a moment ago, the Civil War seems like a long time ago. And some would say that in the last 150 years, America has become a lot less idealistic and a lot more jaded. Well, I just want to share a story that happened this Saturday, this past 2 days ago, that was an amazing event that sort of took place spontaneously, and it really speaks to taking a moment to give thanks. Earlier this week, a man named Hezekiah Perkins passed away at the age of 90. He had pre-planned his funeral at Spring Grove over 20 years ago. Unfortunately, his only living relative, his daughter, could not attend the service for health reasons. The Spring Grove funeral director assigned to the case, whose name is Lanai Strong, knew Mr. Perkins was a Korean War veteran and wanted to give him a proper formal send-off with military honors. So she asked publicly if anyone in the community would be willing to come down and attend the service. The outpouring we got was absolutely unbelievable. There were several hundred cars at the funeral home on Saturday morning. Hundreds of people showed up to the graveside service, and we're a large place and actually jammed the upper part of the cemetery, and including a veteran honor guard. The story was covered by dozens of media outlets, including CNN, Fox News, and the Today Show. And what I thought the coolest little anecdote I found out today, one of our employees took their phone and FaceTimed his daughter so she got to see the whole funeral. So today, we give thanks to our veterans, especially those who perished defending our country. But I'd also like to thank the community for their outpouring of support and appreciation for sacrifice. I'd also like to thank Lene and all the other Spring Grove employees who helped make Saturday a truly inspiring event. We've never had anything like that happen here before. It was really, really neat.
Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah. We'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. The men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out. We'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. The old church bell will peal with joy, hurrah, hurrah. To welcome home our darling boy, hurrah, hurrah. The village lads and lassies say, with roses they will strew the way. We'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. With love and friendship on that day, hurrah, hurrah. The choicest treasures then display, hurrah, hurrah. And let each one perform some part to fill with joy the warrior's heart. We'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah. We'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. The men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out. We'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. We'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home.
Thanks for watching County Fair on Waycross Community Media.
We are going to close with what is probably the most popular song of the American Civil War. Started out as a Methodist hymn in 1800 called "Brothers, Will You Meet Us on Canaan's Happy Shores." As the American Civil War began, there was a young private by the name of John Brown. The man took the melody of that song and invented a tune called "Glory Hallelujah." That song was changed, however, when verses were added about the abolitionist John Brown, who had unsuccessfully raided the federal armory at Harper's Ferry, Virginia. He became a martyr for the cause of slavery. The song was then called "John Brown's Body," and it would inspire Julia Ward Howe, who heard it on November 18, 1861, while doing a camp inspection with her husband. And a friend of hers leaned over as a company of men marched by singing "John Brown's Body Lies Moldering in the Grave," and they said, "Julia, that song is disgusting. You could do a better job." The next morning in 20 minutes, she wrote a poem she called "The Battle Hymn of the Republic." She sold it to Atlantic Monthly newspaper for $5 in February of 1862. It was set to music by Patrick Gilmore, the guy who wrote "When Johnny Comes Marching Home Again," and it very quickly became one of the biggest hits of the American Civil War. It was a favorite of Abraham Lincoln's, our next speaker. So we'll send it out to Mr. Lincoln. We'll send it out to all of our veterans who have paid the ultimate price for our country and our freedom, who are no longer with us. We invite you all to sing along. We're going to do 3 verses. We never know which 3, just to keep it exciting. If you don't know the verses, join us on the chorus, and if you don't know the chorus, make up some words. She says I do that all the time. But we certainly want to thank you again. Have a very safe trip home, a safe holiday weekend, what's left of it, and we hope to see you again next year. The Battle Hymn of the Republic. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grace of wrath is stored. Hath loosed the faithful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. He sounded forth a trumpet that shall never call retreat. He is sifting out the hearts of men before the judgment seat. Be swift, my soul, to answer him. Be jubilant, my feet. Our God is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. He died to make men holy, let us fight to make men free, while God